Good evening, gospel revolutionaries around the whole world. This is Michael Lilborn Williams coming to you live from Clarksville, the Queen City. We appreciate you joining. Thank you for participating in the conference. And yes, I am modeling again today. I know I told you I was going to do it one after the other, but I just forgot. And you can see I still have my name embroidered right on my beautiful handmade shirt. This thing feels good. So like I said, we have just come out of the conference, and I don't know about you, but I'm pretty blown away. I went back, I've listened to every one of them. In fact, I was kind of dogging Daniel every time he got one ready. He's like, send it to me, I want to hear it, I want to hear it. Because it was a mammoth work, and it was something that I now look back upon as a very a point of no return, if you will. I think we've always been at a point of no return where Christianity is concerned. So let me start this by telling you what we do and what we don't do. This is not a healing ministry. We're not promising you healing. We have no evidence that people are being healed today miraculously. We are not giving you a prosperity message that if you give your money, we do hope that you prosper for sure. And those things are quite self-evident that would be our desire for you. But what has happened in the Christian community is that they have turned all of these things that were accomplished at the cross and things that were done to actually point to what the true manifest work of the cross was, which was the gospel of peace primarily. And I want you to notice that when people began to get away from the gospel of peace, they began to make promises to you. Not the promise, which there's only one promise in the scriptures, and that's the promise of righteousness. We've gone through that. Every place that was plural should not have been, and even the word all was added to justify the plurality of the word promise. And it's just not justifiable. It just simply is not there. So we're not doing that. We're not giving you healing. We're not telling you how to live. We're not giving you what morals to have or what morals to reject or what morals to stand for. We just don't do that. We were questioned about being a research ministry. I questioned myself about that. But we definitely don't do that. And we do research. We do a tremendous amount of research. As you know, it had to take, as we claimed, hundreds of hours, at least 100 hours for Daniel and I, and that's just in the last 3 months before this conference. There's been hundreds and hundreds of hours in the last 20 years dedicated to researching this issue of the pseudographicals. Don and I did tremendous amount. A lot of what you heard, as you could hear Don himself explaining about the pseudographicals, we obviously have done our homework. Now we submit that to you. We are not making a declaration, this is what it is and we're right. And we're not going to, I'm also not going to go into what we're going to do. Please listen in on Friday, because that session Daniel and I have recorded. We're not trying to hide how we do this here. It's just what we have to do with Daniel having a full-time job. So what we are going to do on that one coming up Friday is telling you what we're doing now. Where are we going from here? So don't miss that Friday session. It also has some great teaching in it. So that's not what we are doing. Now, what all the other ministries are doing and what they say they do but don't do. They say they bring healing. They say they have prosperity messages. They say that they're teaching you how to manifest as a son of God. Goodness gracious, and we've taken you through that teaching because I've encountered the Manifest Sons doctrine for many decades. This is not a new insight. This is something that's been rehashed and regurgitated over and over again. And the manifest sons of God have manifested. In fact, we found out that word sons is plural, but it is not plural in the Greek. The manifestation of the Son of God. We only needed one son to manifest, and that was Christ. So we're not trying to duplicate the work of the cross or the work of Christ. We're not trying to follow the teachings of Jesus. You're going to be in a real mess if you start trying to follow the teachings of Christ. That seems to be another go-to. But you see, the teachings of Christ came before the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. I was speaking with Glenn the other day, and he was talking about the changes that happened to Jesus himself before the cross and after the cross. And I pointed out one of the things was that Jesus had told the disciples before, if you deny me, I will deny you. Excuse me. And but after the resurrection, it's like, let's just forget about that. Because he did not deny them as they had denied him, each and every one. So just that single point alone shows you that the teachings of Jesus were reconciled. Even his own teachings were reconciled and brought to fruition. Many of the things that Jesus taught was the scriptures. So everything that he taught that was taught from the scriptures was fulfilled at the cross. All the time people are saying, I'm just a follower of the teachings of Jesus. No, you're not. We even did a whole session on being followers of Christ, which what he was telling them was to follow him to the cross. And look how that turned out. Didn't go very well. So anyway, we have done massive amounts of research. And as we ended up the conference, it really dawned on me. It was just like and two ends of this that we have been working on. So came together for me. So what is it we're doing? And why should you be involved? Why should you invest your money in this? We're not going to get you healed. We're not going to get you, the money you give to us is not going to be returned 100-fold, 10-fold, 1-fold. Not by God anyway. There is no promise like that. These are statements that are made that take away. If you try to get these things to happen, you're going to doubt righteousness. And it's the one thing that we should have no doubt about is righteousness. And isn't it true that when you can't get healed, what starts happening, this horrible self-examination? I remember 30 years ago deciding that I was going to stop trying to figure out what was wrong with me because there was no end to it. And I think that was one of the earliest thoughts that I had that guided me toward the gospel. As I found this searching and looking for what's wrong with Mike Williams, it had no end to it. I needed some conclusions, and the conclusion is the work of the cross and righteousness by the power of the death, burial, and resurrection that ended the war between God and man. Yes, ended the war between God and man. To take war between God and man out of the scriptures is absolutely one of the greatest missteps that anybody could ever do. We touched on Isaiah and Micah, and we've looked at those. Both of those are, they're almost exact. They're not completely exact of this definition of what the total end result is. And it is true that the greatest manifestation of they shall learn war no more is between us and God. We shouldn't even be thinking about war between us and God. We don't have to look at that. And even where he's made the statement here, and he says that he would rebuke the nations. And that word rebuke means reason together. It's really funny how that some of these things that were translated according to their preconceived notions about things. Sometimes a Greek word or a Greek word or a definition. It really can be cleared up quite easily just by if you have a Greek or Hebrew interlinear. It's really quite easy to do. And also the Septuagint, which was the attempt to translate the Hebrew scriptures, probably 300 years or so before the cross. It was years before the cross. I'm not going to commit to that. But anyway, a lot of people rely on the Septuagint. That doesn't mean that they got it right either. So you do have the right to go back and study and look into these things for yourself. The term, and neither shall they learn war no more. Now, the word learn means exactly what you think it means, but it has a little extra connotation to it. It means that you're not going to goad somebody into war. Then we're going to stop doing that. Man, hasn't there been a lot of loudmouths that just goad people into war? So, let's not goad into war. If we're going to goad somebody, I do believe in goading people, but it's to investigate and to research and to compare teachings, because our whole heart and mind and soul is to understand the truth, not to preach a doctrine that we have to defend. I don't know of any doctrine that we have to defend whatsoever. We make no promises to you as to what the gospel is going to give you. In fact, we promise you from the text of the New Testament and also the scriptures, the Hebrew scriptures, we make sure that you know that, as Paul taught, that the gospel doesn't give you anything. The gospel and the power of it is in what it removes from you. It removes condemnation. It removes guilt. It removes sin. It removes all distance between God and man. It removed war. It did all of these, and a list could be going on much longer about that. So the power of this gospel in its culmination is, of course, between God and man, and they shall learn no more war, and nation shall not rise up against nation. And so this is what we're seeing. So what are we doing? We're doing something as foolish as anybody ever attempted to do. Our goal is to teach what the Hebrew scriptures have to say about the gospel, and to be clear about that, to where that a mindset is able to be challenged and changed to where that war is not what we go to. That is not our go-to or goad to. I felt like Carlton Pearson there for a minute. We don't want to do anything but goad people into the gospel of peace. There is no war between God and man, and therefore there is conflict resolution built into the gospel. My biggest concern is not just that we disagree with people who say that God was never angry. My concern is that we are removing the power of conflict resolution out of the gospel, because that's what the gospel is. It's the gospel of peace. So they shall learn war no more. It caught my eye when Daniel and I were finishing up, and we were giving you the parameters about the pseudegraphicals out of the book of Revelation. And I looked back, and it's amazing. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, or 11 verses in the Revelation that talks about war. And warring against the angels, warring against the saints warring against all of this stuff. And then comes this, of course, the prophecy then of the scriptures is this is the only thing that we could see in the Revelation is that this was a war, not in the future, of course, but a war that was brought complete reconciliation to at the death, burial, and resurrection of Christ. But it's very interesting what it says here. And in the Revelation, it says, it's talking about this pure river. So, of course, remember we went through the Revelation. We saw the New Jerusalem descending. We saw inside the New Jerusalem was God, the throne, the streets, all of this, and it was all inside of the human race. And it also says right in the middle of that is in the midst of the street of it, and on either side of the river. So this tree was on both sides of the river, it sounds like. And it says, which bear 12 manners of fruit. I'm not going to go into detail about the exact words of this, but there's things to be learned here. And it says that those 12 manners of fruit yielded her fruit every month, and the leaves of the tree were for the healing of the nations. Folks, we're not trying to get people healed of cancer. We hope you have a good doctor and people to support you as you go through that. We're not trying to get you to be the richest preacher that's ever lived on the planet. We're not trying to tell you how to live your life. What we are doing is developing the mindset of the gospel. Let this mind be in you, which I have some things to say about that in this this coming Friday's podcast too, about something that I said that was just completely wrong in the last Tuesday session that I did. So I want you to listen to that because I'm admitting to being wrong about what I said. And nobody called me on it. That was so disappointing. Nobody called me on my mistake. But I correct it and we set the record straight, but you'll have to listen Friday to find out what that is. So here we have the prophecies of the scriptures telling us about that they shall learn war no more. And then here at the very end of the Revelation in chapter 22, and it's one of the very last verses. There's only about 5 or 6 more verses in the Revelation that are not pseudographical as this comes up. And it tells us about this tree that's on both sides of the rivers of the river. And we know that this is inside of us. Here is my message to you. You have the healing of the nations inside of you. Where's the healing of the nations? Where's the end of war? It's going to come out of you. It'll come out of everyone. And the only way we can allow that to come out of us is to allow the gospel to strip all of this religion out of us. All of this obsession with God doing things for us. Look what he's done. And the culmination of what he's done is going to result, not supposed to, is going to result in the fact that the leaves of that tree that are indeed inside of you are for the healing of the nations. And this incredible picture that we have is the nations not in conflict anymore. My throat's gotten really raspy. I don't know why. I think it's the changing weather here in Tennessee. Anyway, we love you guys. Thank you. And I did go over 18 minutes, but I am. That's pretty powerful, wasn't it? I do care about you guys so much. Please stay in contact with us. I always love getting the text and the calls. And I get texts and calls from people and they say, is this really Mike Williams? It's like, yeah, kind of put my phone number out there. So we do care about you. Thank you so much. And get involved with us. This is going to be expensive to go, especially from where we are now. Our expense will go up, not down, because we want to go into, as I said, I'm not going to tell you what we're going to go into. You have to watch the Friday session to find out exactly where Daniel and I and the whole staff are going with this from this point on. I'm 71 years old, and I've never had so much work to do in front of me.